Sorry, I just realized I was muted. Welcome to round two breakout session with Laura Beth Hayes. Laura is a 20-year veteran teacher or a veteran educator currently serving as the assistant principal at Creekside Elementary in Hardin County. She is currently completing her Doctor of Education with Western Kentucky University with an emphasis on trauma-informed care and teacher efficacy. Ms. Hayes holds degrees in educational leadership and literacy, as well as national board certification. The session title is Trauma Toolkit, providing applicable tools for apprehensive and reluctant teachers. So at this time, we welcome Ms. Hayes.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm excited to be here. My husband is hoping to pop in. He is also an educator, but he had an issue at his school this morning that has prevented him from joining us yet. So he texted me, I hope to pop in. If he can't, then I'll go on without him. But he's a high school teacher, so I really wanted his perspective for our secondary people as well. But as she said, my name is Laura Beth Hayes. I'm excited to be on here with you all this morning. Trauma is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I just wanted to start by sharing a little bit of why. Trauma has affected me, obviously, as an educator, like it has all of you, but also as a mother. And that's what has made this such a passionate topic for me. Almost 11 years ago, my husband and I adopted a son from China. His name is Jackson. He is 13 now, and he is in the 7th grade. He was almost 3 when we adopted him. And Jackson has something called reactive attachment disorder. Sometimes it's known as RAD, and I'm sure a lot of you have children in your buildings with RAD, and you know that it can be a very challenging disability. Thankfully, we have come a very long way with my child, but I wanted to be transparent with you on when I share some of the things that I share, it is from experience. We have been in the hospital with my son. I've had to have the police at my home 2 or maybe 3 times. We have had to make some really difficult and challenging decisions. I have been at the bottommost pit of despair of thinking there was no hope at all. And then just this weekend, he was in an archery competition and then zoomed over to all district band and made all district band and then went to Vex Robotics, and he's going to the beta convention today. And so when I think back to the years that he had to be restrained almost every day at school, to what happened this weekend and me, telling him goodbye this morning and walking out the door and letting him go, we've had such a huge transformation. And I attribute that to a lot of things, but primarily to some phenomenal educators who learned with us along the way on what we should and what we should not do. And so that really made me passionate as a teacher at the time that we have got to inform people better, and not just inform them, but we have to equip them. And so as an assistant principal, that is one of my goals, is to equip our teachers. And as my goal with my dissertation is to see, do teachers feel that they have the tools that they need? Do administrators have the tools? And what I'm finding in research and just interaction with people and the study I'm doing within my own district is that people do not feel that they are equipped. They have training. They have knowledge. I know all of you on here, you know what trauma-informed care is. You know what trauma looks like in your schools. You could sit here and rattle off, a dozen kids in your mind. But where we're stuck as in education in general is that we've got all the awareness, but that we don't have all the tools. And sometimes we don't have all the resources. And so we don't have everybody on board. And then what happens, like, for example, with my son, he had one school year where he had a really trauma-informed teacher, and she was fantastic. It was a great experience. He felt loved, secure. Everything that we asked was in place. The next year, it was a completely different experience, and everything fell apart. And that's when we ended up, in an institution for a little while to give him the care that he needed. And so a lot of that was just because we didn't have consistency in the school I was at the time. And if we're not providing that to my son, I know we're not providing it to all of our students as well. And so I know that as an administrator, it can be very frustrating because you know what you want to see in your staff, and you might have a vision of what you want to see in your school, but then you hit those reluctant teachers. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, and hopefully give you some tools and tips to give you some confidence to help with that. Because if you don't have consistency across your school, then you are going to experience what we've experienced as parents. You're going to have highs and lows for these kiddos, and you're going to hit a brick wall all of the time. And so we wanted to share with you today just some strategies and things that I've learned through research and we've learned through real life And while I'm speaking, if you have any questions, you're welcome to type those in the chat. And I know she's moderating that, and I can check that as well because I'm happy to answer anything. I'm a pretty transparent person, so I'm happy to answer anything that you might want to ask. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I have made a presentation that I want to share with you. And so let me get that pulled up here. My computer likes to move around on Zoom, so it likes to be a little bit difficult. All right. Can you see the yellow slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so what I have created that I wanted to share with you today, and I've linked this in the grid, and then I will link it in the chat box as well, but I wanted to give you a toolkit because I know, like I said, it's one thing for us to have a presenter to come in and do a summer PD on trauma. And you might make a PBIS plan, you know, and have it from a trauma perspective. But what does that really look like for your teachers in the classroom? And so the research I've been doing with Western is we've been looking at, do teachers feel prepared? Do students coming out of college feel prepared? And I know a lot of you are in the same boat as my school. We have a lot of people that are just, you know, might be an option 6, or we have a lot of special ed teachers that have not had a lot of training and they're finishing their degrees and they're already in the schools working. And we have a lot of paraeducators in the same boat that have just kind of come in off the street and they're working and they maybe don't know a lot of the information, but we also have teachers coming right out of college who still don't have a great handle on trauma and what that looks like as far as strategies in the classroom. And so you get all these people together and you've got good intentions, but if you don't have real strategies, then they struggle. And so I've been meeting with a cohort from my school district in Hardin County, and we have a lot of elementary schools, and we've been working together to just kind of evaluate where are we as teachers and as educators, and what do we feel that we understand and know, and then what do we need? And so the information I'm going to share with you today is based on what this group of teachers that represent a very diverse group of educators throughout our district, what they feel they need to help them be more successful. So this toolkit is something that you could actually take back to your schools and that you could use. And so if you look here at this first slide, these are some statements that some of the teachers made directly on a survey that I conducted with them. They feel that they want to be trauma informed. They want to support these students and give them what they need, but they feel like they don't know what that looks like in their classroom. What does that look like every day? They feel like they don't have all the resources. They feel like, well, I'm doing it, but the teacher next door is not. Or when I take my students to specials or when they go to the cafeteria, they're not having consistency. And so they're unable to successfully implement these ideas. They feel like they want to involve, you know, other caregivers and parents better, but they're apprehensive about that. They do, thankfully, most of them felt very supported by their administrators, but then they still don't know what to do but call them and ask for them to come down and remove the child. And so they know that there's something better. And so they need that support. So I wanted you to see this because I imagine that a lot of the staff in your building feels the same way. They want to do what's best for these children. There are very few, there are some, you know, but there are very few adults that just do not care about children in our schools. Most of them want to do what is best, but they do feel like they're struggling. And so if you look, here's just a quick little research perspective. This is kind of what we call a fishbone in research, but these are the root causes of teachers not feeling like they know how to regulate their students. So we want to move kind of a shift from thinking that students with trauma or students that are exhibiting trauma affected behaviors are, you know, troubled students, or they're students that just need, oh, let's just get them on a chart so we can get them data to get them into special ed, because that's not appropriate always either. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But we have to go away from this concept of these are just discipline problems in our schools. And so unfortunately, a lot of teachers don't know what to do other than to treat them as either one of those subgroups. So if you look, these are the 3 areas that have really come out of the research. That number 1, there's a lack of training. There's great awareness training, but there's not a lot of, hey, here's a tip of something that you can do right now in your classroom to help manage this child. There's not a lot of teacher efficacy, and that's a big thing we're going to talk about today. Your teachers just don't feel confident. They're uncomfortable with a student that's out of control in their classroom or that's dysregulated. They're nervous. They don't want to set them off. They don't want to have to call you all of the time. So they just feel like they don't have a lot of confidence. And then there's a lack of resources. There's great funding for awareness, but there's not a lot of resources on, hey, this is something you can use in your classroom, and this is a great SEL program that we can implement school-wide. We're all still kind of floundering on that. There's a lot of good consistency statewide and making sure that we're all trained and making sure that we're all implementing PBIS. But when it comes to like, here's a great research-based program to implement in all of your classrooms, even middle school and high school, we're just not there yet. And so those are some of the root causes. I think I'm not going to read those obviously to you, but it is kind of interesting if you look at some of the highlights there. Something that we found in our school, and this would be true K through 12, if you're only training your certified staff, then what's happening with your classified staff? And that we realized we had not trained our classified staff because they just hadn't had the same requirements as our certified employees. And so we have been working with meeting with them because a lot of times some of the breakdown was happening with those individuals or in our cafeteria, even our bus drivers. We did a trauma-informed care training for our bus drivers this summer. They deal with students in such a different way than we do, and they don't have the tools that we have during the day. So just helping them to understand some strategies that they can use as well is very beneficial. So I just want you to think first today, what training have you provided to your staff? Is it just an awareness training? Or did you bring somebody in that could give them specific strategies? Have you trained your cafeteria staff? Have you trained your bus drivers? Do the people in your office know how to respond to these students? Because we have a great responsibility to not provide secondary trauma for these students. And these are hard to love kiddos. I know that. I know my own son can be such a porcupine and he is hard to love. And I always, before he goes to school, I have a sheet for every teacher, like, here's what you need to know about him. And here's why I know it's going to be challenging for you, but here's some tips and things that work for him. So I know it's difficult. And I know these kids can be the most unlovable kiddos in our building, but everybody in your school, everyone needs to know how to help these children so we don't set them off and make things worse for them. Think about the confidence that your teachers have. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but your teachers need to feel empowered. And that might start with them just reflecting on where they're at. That might be something that they haven't taken the time to think about. How confident do they feel? Do they feel they know what to do? Do they feel that they've been properly trained? Do they feel confident to come to you and say, I'm struggling with this particular student? Sometimes, and I know when I was a classroom teacher, we don't want to be the person that goes to an administrator or a counselor and says, hey, I'm running out of ideas. I don't know what to do. Sometimes for some teachers, that's embarrassing, or they feel that that looks like a weakness. And so teachers need to have some personal conversation in their mind and with their administrator on just how they feel and where they're at. I think teachers do often feel supported by admin when it comes to this. And I think admin struggle with this too, because teachers, they're frustrated with a student. They want you to deal with it. You feel pressure to deal with it and give them, that solution that they're looking for. But then you're also trying to meet the needs of the student. So it can be very difficult, as you know, at times. And then think about the programs that you do have in your school. Do you have a common SEL program? Do you have something for your older students, your middle school and high school students, that is helping your staff be able to monitor students, teach students self-regulation strategies and emotional control? Those are not just elementary skills and strategies. So just I kind of wanted to throw this slide out there for you to think, where are you at your school or in your context, your setting in these three areas? What do you see? And so one of the big things that I have learned as I have gone through this 2-year process of researching trauma is that we don't spend enough time with teachers reflecting on this. We talk to them about their practice in their classrooms, and we talk about their classroom management. We talk about their teaching practices and their pedagogy, but then do we actually ask them to think about how they feel about students who are difficult, or how they feel about students who are out of control? And sometimes you can get some really good information out of that when teachers are being honest about how they feel when a student is daily disrupting their classroom or monopolizing the situation. How does that really make them feel? And so what I have done for you is, you'll see here, I've created a survey that was based on the survey that I created with Western, and I also partnered with a researcher at the College of William and Mary. And we created, it's kind of a teacher self-efficacy survey just to see, like, how do teachers feel? And I would challenge you to use this with your staff. So I've surveyed some teachers here, I've surveyed teachers in our district, and it's very interesting to see what comes out of the survey. So you can kind of see as I scroll through here, there are a lot of different scales here where teachers are kind of rating themselves on how confident they feel to be able to shift behaviors, how confident they feel implementing a calm down space, or how they feel that they can remain calm, or that they can seek the root cause when there's a problem. It's not a terribly long survey, and it also gives them some short answers at the end that they can take. And I'm going to give you a link to this so that you could create your own. You can edit it yourself and be able to send it out to your staff. But it's really interesting to be able to pull out this information and see just how does your staff feel? Because it might be something you really haven't talked a lot about and that you haven't given a lot of thought to yourself as an administrator. It's something that maybe you believe as a school, we all want to achieve this together, but how do people really feel? And I was really surprised. I thought before I gave the survey, I thought, well, people are probably going to say they don't feel supported, or maybe they are going to say that, you know, they personally have kind of a bad attitude toward these students. That's not what came out of my results. It'd be interesting to see what yours are. The results that I got were teachers felt they really wanted to do the right thing, but they felt that they were going to mess up. And so they just decided to kind of be more hands-off. So self-reflection is a really important piece of this because we all have our own biases. We all have our own perspective. I can promise you, before I adopted my son, my feelings and my perspective on trauma are very different than they are now. And even my perspective on their parents. I was probably pretty judgmental in my early years as an educator, and I probably attributed some of the issues to the parents more than I should have. And when I look back on that and where we are as a family, I think it's really important that we check ourselves sometimes because it's very, very easy to get a little astray, especially when behavior is involved. So the next piece.
We have one question in the chat.
Yes,
I'd like to
go
answer
ahead.
before you go on. The question says, do you give this, meaning the reflection, to your classified staff as well?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, because that's kind of how we discovered that our classified staff does not feel that they were very equipped at all. And that was like a light bulb for us, like, oh my gosh, why did we never think about that? That seems so simple, but yes. So yes, classified staff as well, because I think it's really important to see those attitudes kind of emerge and those ideas. So I'll give you an example. I have a student that I work with daily that we have to remove from the classroom at times. And it's kind of a difficult situation. But in that classroom, when I walk in, a lot of the times there are two assistants and they will quickly say, he's at it again. Here he goes again. He wouldn't do it. And like loudly in front of the class. And, you know, so we have spent a lot of time with them as a team, like trying to educate them. And when I went in yesterday, it was a completely different experience. And the child was able to be gently removed from the room without having to, you know, implement any SEM techniques or anything like that. So I think that has been very, very important for us in order to help them see that, number one, we're not just being easy on these kids. And I think that the teachers and the classified staff have been more supportive of our measures because now they understand it a little bit better. So that's a great question. Piece that teachers expressed in the surveys that I've conducted was that they felt that there was a lot of inconsistency. And so if you kind of look at this little flow chart here, I just want you to, again, I want you to reflect for a minute on your school and how well you're implementing trauma at your school. Do you have all of your staff trained? And have you given them tools that they can use? Have you said, here's what we're going to do at our school. If this is what's happening, these are the tools that we are going to use. Have you equipped calm down corners or any types of strategies to calm students? What is your counselor providing those types of services? So just think about what you've done with your staff. How are you informing parents? I think it's really important that you inform parents that, hey, we're a trauma-informed care school. These are some strategies that we're going to use at our school to support all students, but particularly our students, which is going to be up to 50% of your population who have been affected by trauma. And that's going to support you on the end of when parents call and say, well, I want to know why didn't Johnny get this consequence? Or what are you doing? Remember, we're a trauma-informed care school. Some of the things that we're doing are to heal our students and not just to punish our students and to help them grow. So that can help you in many ways as well. What are your common norms? And I think this is huge. When I think back to like I said, my son's elementary experience and It was not consistent. There were not common norms in our school, even on like, hey, this is what we are going to do at this school. This is how we are going to speak to students, not just guidelines, not just, these are expectations, but these are the norms. Do you have norms at your school for the adults in your building on how they speak to children? How do they interact with children? And again, this goes to your whole staff. Is your cafeteria staff, are they yelling at the students as they come through? Are there people that are hostile toward children? If you have common norms that are established by your entire staff and agreed upon, then that makes that conversation easier when I've had to go in a teacher's classroom and say, this is not how we talk to students at Creekside. You know this. This is not our norm here. And so sometimes you have to establish those because it isn't common. And you might have a staff that's great about this, but you might be in a building where it is very inconsistent. So establishing those norms, and that could be important for the students too. Here are norms at our school. This is how you will talk to teachers. This is how you will act in the hallway. This is how you will interact with others. Make sure your PBIS is strong and consistent, and that is very important. It kind of ties into those norms. Those can kind of go together, but if it's not consistent, you're really going to struggle with consistency, and kids are going to pick up on that. And our trauma kids, it's like they can sense it. I feel like my son can sense any weakness in us as parents in a heartbeat. And so they are slick and they can do that. So please make sure that your PBIS is strong and that is implemented across your building. And that just means you've got to be out in your building and you got to be aware that they're doing it and what's happening. Something else is student leaders. That can be so great. We use student leaders as like safety patrol in the hallway. We use them as mentors. We have lunch buddies and things like that. But I have what's called a breakfast club every morning. There's about 18 kids in it now. We've released a few. We bring in kiddos as leaders to the breakfast club who were some of our discipline concerns or our trauma kids who have improved. So they were kiddos that struggled last year. And then they come in and these students are identified in our school. They eat breakfast with me every morning. We work on manners. We work on self-control, how we act at school, our night went, what happened at home this morning. It just gives them a positive connection before we throw them out into a classroom. And that could be K-12 again. And just gives them that connection every day. And sometimes when we release them, when they're doing better, they don't want to leave. But I like breakfast club. And then we are getting ready to have a session with parents where they're the ones who are in the breakfast club. Their parents are going to come in and eat with them. And we're going to look at their behavior data and look at their sheets and talk about, hey, here's where they're still struggling, but here's where we've improved. And so we're having that positive connection, and our student leaders will be a part of that as well. Another big piece is having calm down kids. And I know this sounds like a preschool thing, but I'm telling you, it is very beneficial, even with my middle school kiddos at home and kids that I work with outside of the school setting who are at the same age. They love having something when they're getting a little frustrated to fidget with, or to sit and just go and deep breathe for a minute. So in my district, we're working on making calm down kits for every K-2 classroom as part of this research project. And I'll be happy to share what's in those kits with anyone if you would like to email me for that information. Basically, we're using a lot of different fidgets. We have some cards with texture. We have some cards that tell them like, hey, try this breathing strategy. We've got a little video that they're going to be able to scan that they can watch that calms them down. So it's just going to be in a little tub. You don't have to have an elaborate kit in the corner of your room, but just something to say, hey, you seem like you're getting a little stressed. I'm going you to take this for 5 minutes, and just giving them that space is important. And then the last piece of consistency is, are you engaging your services? Are you, really pulling in your FRC and your counselors, your therapists, all the resources in your school, and not just waiting until things escalate or blow up. So just think about that consistency piece. I think this is important to go over with your staff too, this slide, because they need to see that all of these parts have to work together, including them. It's not just what happens in the classroom, it's all of those things that make trauma-informed care successful in a school. And so the last thing that I wanted to share is teachers feel really frustrated that they don't have specific strategies. They want help to know exactly what to do. And that's something that I've been working on with my staff, is bringing in different people who I know are experts, getting our school psychologists in here, getting some of our district-based special ed staff. Even if these students are not special ed students, our special ed staff, they are phenomenal resources of knowing what to do to help students regulate and calm down. I'm not sure why it's doing that. There we go. And so get people in your building that can give teachers specific strategies. I know I share with our staff a lot of the things that I have done with my son to help him calm down at home or to build a relationship with him. But there are so many people in your different counties that can come in and can provide that specific training. Therapists, I know that we have there's a lot of groups. So if you need suggestions on that, I'd be happy to help you. But what I made on this slide is I just added some resources that I think would personally benefit, and that I have talked to teachers that they feel this would be helpful, something they can just quickly have access to. And so there's a little overview of trauma-informed care here. If you need a great video for any of your staff, you can click on that first grid box there, and you can use that to help you. This video talks about calm down corners. And again, it can be K-12. My husband has students that he works with that he has used a lot of different strategies to help them because he can recognize in them the same things. Our kids are not that different. They're just bigger, you know, sometimes stinkier versions of each other. This video is on self-control. Again, it's let me pull it up and show you an example here. So this one is actually for kids. But it's a great little video on just what does self-control mean. And I even have shown this to my middle school son before. So it looks, like I said, elementary, but it doesn't have to be. But it's a great video. Kids don't know when you're saying self-control. Great little video. There are breathing videos that you can click on that kids can just sit there, and you can pull it up on your phone. You can have it on a Chromebook in the classroom, and they can sit there and they can breathe and calm down. This is an instructional video right here on class meetings and the importance of that. Even if you're secondary, middle school or high school, taking 2 minutes to start your class by saying, hey, how's everybody doing? Are we having a good day? Just making those connections. These kiddos from trauma are craving connections so badly, and they just bring it out in the worst way. But having that little connection and taking that time to have a little class meeting can be very beneficial to developing a classroom environment and a feel for a family in your classroom. It's really important for these kiddos because they're sometimes not experiencing that at home at all. And they need somewhere to feel safe and loved and accepted. And I found that even with my own son, when other kids understood that, hey, you know, sometimes Jackson kind of struggles with his choices or his anger, and we're all going to help him with that. They were so much more empathetic once they understood, and they were honestly less frightened too. There's some calm down videos. Again, some more videos that you can play for a child to follow along with and help them calm down. There's a training video here that's really great for teachers. If you were going to share any of them, this first one and this one right here, the de-escalation strategies, give some teachers specific ways they could de-escalate a child on their own in their classroom. Doesn't mean it's going to work every time, doesn't mean they won't always need you, but it gives them something that they could try to do in their classroom first. This box is really important to share with your staff too. Teachers have to maintain self-care when they are working with kids from trauma. And I've been in therapy myself, just at different times, just managing my child, because there's a lot that you take on when you're dealing with these challenging kiddos. So it's important that teachers find ways, even if it's just a box of chocolate for themselves throughout the day. You made it another hour, you got this, but encourage them to take some space, because when you know that teachers are getting very frustrated and at their wits' end, then they're going to pass that along to the student, and they're going to struggle. And then there's a little video on loving challenging kiddos. And this can be encouragement for any of your staff, even yourself, because we all get exhausted sometimes dealing with some of the things that we have to deal with. So all that to say, I hope that this is just a quick little toolkit that you can use. But I know if you're like me, you want something that you could take back and immediately give to your staff and immediately give them some help and some support. I think that we've come a long way with trauma in our state over the last 5 to 10 years, but we have a long way to go. And I just wanted to share with you that there is hope. I was told when my son was 6, there was a very strong, greater than 50% likelihood that he'd be in prison or be an addict by the time he was a teenager. And so when I think about how far he has come on into helping him, I believe that this is why, and I believe that trauma-informed care works. So thank you for joining me today. Like I said, I've got a PDF to this toolkit and a link as a presentation. If you would like the actual survey to be able to get your own responses, if you want to easily be able to do that, you can email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and I will also put a link to it in the grid. I will go back and add that, or you can be a a contributor to that. So here is my email. I am also very happy. I have a separate presentation that I do that's a little bit more about my son and our experiences and some specific strategies for teachers. I've done that for several schools. I would be thrilled to do that with your school virtually or anything. So thank you so much for coming and joining us, and good luck with the rest of your school year.
Thank you so much. This was very, very helpful. I'm not sure if you have another presentation, but if there are people who would like to join, breakout rooms 12 through 15 are open for the rest of the time. So if anyone wants to carry over a conversation about trauma, if you are willing to, if you would like to join them or anything, then you can comment there in the chat and you can move over to breakout rooms 12 through 15 if you would like to further the conversation or anything with anyone from the group. So thank you so much, Laura, and we appreciate all the great resources. Remember, you can access them on the grid where the description was for the session. So thank you.
Thank you.